In this week in MMA, we're going to recap the weekend that was, preview the week that is, get into the fan question in round number 1, and as always, our favorite segment of the show, the Twitter Purge. So, let's get into it. Alright, and welcome to another episode of This Week in MMA. Of course, I'm one half of your co-hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. Matt joining us, as always, at Matt Allen FNP. And listen, we had a great weekend of fights. And by fights, I mean one fight card in particular, of course, the culmination of International Fight Week. UFC 239, Jones, Santos. You also had Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm, and a lot of other great fights. A lot of people looking forward to this, and from boots on the ground, International Fight Week actually went quite well. I know we were a little down on it last week. Of course, you only had that one fight card compared to previous years where maybe you throw in a contender series, but we've always seemed to have
the Ultimate Fighter finale.
A season of the Ultimate Fighter culminating in that week. So UFC 239, we'll get to that recap a little bit later on. We're also going to focus on the card coming up this week. Jermaine Durandamy, Aspen Ladd, Uriah Faber, Ricky Simone. Some good fights on there as well. Of course, you also have Bellator 224. You've got Contender Series coming out this week that we just had. All 5 winners getting contracts. Great stuff there. There's also one championship on Friday. And on Thursday, you also have PFL episode.
A lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on. PFL Season 2. Looking forward to that. Now, the plan for today's show, we're going to get into round number 1. This one's going to take us a little bit. You know, I first heard this question from at Shaplo Michael, and listen, he wrote a great article for us last week. Junior Dos Santos, A Fallen King. You can find that at FightNightPicks.net, as well as plenty of other articles. My fingers haven't stopped on these keys, man. I've been, just pounding out a ton of articles. It's been a lot of fun, but you can find Mike's article there as well. He asked us a great question, so we're going to spend a lot of time on that. We're going to get into the Twitter Purge, of course, our favorite news segment in addition to round number 1.
We have a news segment every week.
It seems like we do, and a lot of great different things that happened on Twitter over this past week. Then we're going to get into the recap, the preview of the week, and listen, there's actually going to be a special bonus episode tomorrow. We're going to preview this week in depth, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. Toss us a sub. It's not that hard. It helps us out, and it helps you know when we go live. And
hit that bell notification right next to the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of our newest posts.
Possible new videos. So look out for that one tomorrow. So today, like I said, round number 1. Matt, if we get into round number 1, let's see the question that we have at hand. All right, Matt, so let's get into round number 1. Of course, you got a perturbed looking at Shaplo Michael. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us on the writing team. Great one on JDS, but let's hear what his question is.
Hey guys, it's Mike. Just wrote the article about Junior Dos Santos. My question for you is, who do you think could win a Royal Rumble at heavyweight?
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack there. So, Royal Rumble at heavyweight, Matt, what are some of the ground rules that we're going to have to establish early on?
So, we're going to say that all of the fights happen inside of a UFC cage. They're all done under strict drug testing, and we're going to use the unified rules of MMA. It might not seem like it's going to be that big of a factor in a lot of these, but just nice to kind of have one uniform rule set around everything, and that's just the one that we kind of chose.
I think that's totally fair, and listen, if we go to a Royal Rumble type scenario, you look at it WWE, WWF style, you have 2 people inside of a squared ring, and then you have to knock each other out of that. Yeah, we could do that. We could talk about that. Brock Lesnar would win that one, hands down.
He has experience.
He has experience in both fields. So Brock Lesnar would, of course, win that one. But if we have a look at it this way, and now we're very small, but you can see our ranking system there.
Can you? Because I can't.
What we ended up doing was we made a bracket. Now, if you look at the names on there, and if you look at this bracket style, the way that it was chosen was totally at random.
Yeah, completely random.
What we did was, it's a bracket of 16. We went through the top 16 MMA heavyweights that are out there currently, but if you look at those names, you have to take them as they are. Of course, Fedor Emelianenko's on this list. You've also got Czech Congo. You have to take present-day Fedor Emelianenko.
It's not prime Fedor. It's, old Fedor got knocked out by Matt Mitrick.
The numbers next to the names are totally at random. The matchups are totally at random. So, Matt, let's have a look at these. So, we have at the top Fedor Emelianenko taking on Vitaly Minakov. You have Curtis Blades taking on Daniel Cormier. Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos. You have Czech Congo taking on John Jones. Then we have Derek Lewis, Stipe Miocic. You also have Phil DeFries taking on Alistair Overeem, kind of a clash of styles there.
Much,
You've got Amir Ali Akbari taking on Sergey Kharitonov, which to me is one of the most fun fights in this. You've also got Ryan Bader taking on Alexander Volkov, and that rounds out our bracket. So, Matt, pick a fight at random here.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and pick a winner.
So, well, let's just get the easy ones out of the way first.
Okay.
So, Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but those guys just fought. And Francis did win, and I feel like he would win pretty much 10 out of 10. So, that's pretty safe. I think that we both agree on that, is that Francis Ngannou would move on to the second round pretty easily. Yep. Another fun one is Curtis Blaydes, Daniel Cormier. It's definitely a fun fight. It is one of the more competitive ones, but I really do think Daniel Cormier would win that fight. Just the difference in striking is just so massive that I just don't think Curtis Blaydes would be able to take Daniel Cormier down in the first place.
So if we look at those fights, so you've got Junior Dos Santos and Ngannou. We're both going to pick Ngannou to move forward. So then we're talking Curtis Blaydes, Daniel Cormier, similar skill sets. It's just one's
way better,
leaps and bounds ahead. So we're picking Cormier there. So automatically you've got Cormier, you've got Ngannou moving on to the next round. So if we go back up to the top, Vitaly Minakov taking on Fedor Emelianenko. Now, if this fight took place
in 2003 in Japan,
even 10 years ago,
yeah,
I'd be picking Fedor Emelianenko. He's arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Yeah. So it would be tough to pick in those circumstances. Now, we know from Minakov in his last performance against Czech Congo, he didn't look good, but this was a guy that was undefeated. He was 21-0, super dominant, whether he was fighting over in Russia, if he was back with Bellator in the first go-through, super dominant. So we know that the potential's still there, and I think in a fight against Fedor Emelianenko right now, we saw that Emelianenko had success in the first couple of rounds in the tournament.
It was against undersized people who were just fighting at heavyweight to be in the tournament.
Exactly. And then, true colors finally shone, and obviously Ryan Bader won the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix. So in this fight, I'm going to be taking Minakov over Emelianenko. I think he'd be able to get it done. I don't know if he'd be able to get a finish in that fight, but it's an overwhelming Minakov.
I agree. And then that would bring us to Czech Congo and John Jones. The winner of that would face Francis Ngannou.
Now, let's just say one thing.
Yes.
Czech Congo's looked effing amazing for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Now, he had long drawn-out decision wins with Bellator.
Horrible to watch.
And then all of a sudden he just started flipping a switch and finishing guys.
Yeah.
So he's looked great. He's going to hopefully get a chance. It hasn't been announced yet, which is really surprising to me, considering that Mitrione Kharitonov was rebooked, especially after the nut shot that we saw and the old hemorrhoid on Sergey Kharitonov. But for Czech Congo taking on John Jones, it's not even a shout of a doubt.
John Jones would kill him.
John Jones is going to win that fight.
Yeah, he would. Pretty easily.
That brings us to Derek Lewis, Stipe Miocic. I think that's one to me that's fairly easy. I think Miocic would get the win there.
I think Miocic would win 9 times out of 10. But Derek Lewis has that weird X factor, which is if you take me down, I can just get up. And I've got ungodly power and I carry it through the whole fight. So Derek Lewis definitely has a chance in that fight. And it would be a great fight to watch if they did end up matching those two together down the line. But I do think just today, as of right now, Derek Lewis coming off 2 losses, Stipe would win this fight quite easily.
So Stipe Miocic there, moving on to the next round. So far in our next round, you've got Minakov going up against Cormier. You've got Ngannou taking on John Jones. And like we said, Miocic moving on. In our next fight, Phil DeFries, KSW heavyweight champion. We've seen him beat some really good fighters lately. He's been good since he left the UFC. Decent run in Bellator, and since he's joined KSW, he's looked great. He's going to be taking on Alistair Overeem, and we've seen Overeem fight fighters like this in the past and win.
Yeah, he knocks their head off.
Phil DeFries has fought heavy hitters recently, and he's done really well. I mean, even in the Tomasz Narkun fight, that's a guy that's...
Tomasz Narkun's not Alistair Overeem.
He's a guy that's really well-rounded, and he hits hard, so he was able to get the win there. DeFries has great jiu-jitsu. Overeem...
Great defensive jiu-jitsu.
You and I have talked about this. Overeem, a guy kind of like Luke Rockhold, an underrated ground game.
Yes.
And I know that's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. It's not a hot take.
No, it's one of those things, when you're at the upper echelon and you're just so good at everything, people only seem to focus on your striking because, for instance, Tony Ferguson, most people think, oh, well, he's this phenomenal striker. But, oh, wait, he's actually a grappler by trade. So it just, once you get to a certain level and everyone's good at everything, you kind of overshadow some of the skills people are well known for. And I really feel like Alistair Overeem, of course, he's the kickboxer. We all know all of his accolades. It's just, he does have a really solid ground game. He's got good wrestling defense. It's not phenomenal by any means, but I do think it would be good enough to at least keep Phil DeFries off of him. He is pretty chinny, but even at this point in his career, he is still a phenomenal striker. He's one of those kind of glass cannons in MMA. And I feel like he'd be able to beat Phil DeFries in this one. It would be one of the more competitive matchups in the first round, but I do feel like Alistair Overeem would move on to the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a fairly competitive fight.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be like a starch, quick knockout.
He wouldn't run across the cage and flying name in 5
No,
seconds.
exactly. But I think that's one of the better matchups in this. And then the next fight, to
So
me,
we both have Alistair moving on?
Yeah, we
Okay.
both have Alistair moving on. The next fight, to me, is actually really intriguing because you got a guy in Sergey Kharitonov, 28-6 with 2 no contests, and the poor guy, I mean, in his last 3 fights,
in this matchup,
2 no
is
contests.
he hemorrhoided up or is he all clear?
I mean, he's going to be all clear from the Mitrione
that's
fight
good.
coming up, so he's all clear. You got to take him as he is. I mean, in his last number of fights, 5 wins and then 2 no contests, and again, 2 no contests in his last 3 fights.
Yeah.
So if you look at those, it's kind of tough because in the Anton Viazijan fight, he was losing. In the fight against Nelson, he looked great, although he kind of cheated. And then in the next fight, it was done in the first minute due to the nut shot. And then for Amir Ali Akbari, some people might say, well, who's this guy? I mean, he's looked great in his last 6 fights, all wins.
His only loss to Mirko Cro Cop.
Only lost to Cro Cop.
And that was a Ryzen Cro Cop.
And that was the 2016 Ryzen Openweight Grand Prix, which Cro Cop won.
Cro Cop came in looking shredded.
Other than that, I mean, just a ton of finishes. In his last fight, it was a first-round finish over Shelton Graves, a name that, you know, many might recognize. He had a win over Daniel Milanchuk, who competed in the UFC. I mean, Denis Smoldarev, he's a really good fighter as well.
Household name.
And then Valentin Moldavsky was able to get a split there in Ryzen. So this is a guy that's looked great, former ACB heavyweight champion. The UFC signed him this past spring. And he's going to be taking on Sergey Kharitonov, who, listen, he's got fights against Andrei Arlovsky, Verdun,
Alistair Overeem.
some of the best. But that was before.
Favorite.
This is now. And even though, you know, Kharitov's looked good lately, I think Ali Akbari, with the wrestling, with the striking, he's just one of those complete package guys. I'm going to take him to win this fight. When he comes into the UFC, build him up slowly. I wouldn't give him tough tests yet.
No, I don't want to see him fight Derek Lewis.
No, exactly. Build him up really slow. Give him a guy. There's always
Give him
those
like a Cyril Ascaire.
Daniel Colombo, Cyril Ascaire. There's always these guys that
Bring
all of a
Marcelo
sudden,
Golden back for one.
Chris Della Roca. There's these type of guys that kind of
We are getting real
float
obscure.
around. Listen, Anthony Hamilton, if you want to
You
bring
can
him
bring
back.
the freight train.
But Amir Ali Akbari, realistically, and we had him on this list as one of the top 16 best
We did.
heavyweights in the world.
I don't know if he's really there, but
I've got him winning this fight against
I do
Sergey
too. No,
Kharitonov.
he beats Kharitonov. If it was 5-10 years ago, Kharitonov probably wins, but at this point in their careers, yes, I agree.
And then in our last fight in the round of 16,
We disagree on this so tremendously, and I think you shouldn't talk MMA if you think Ryan Bader's going to win.
Ryan Bader taking on Alexander Volkov. And if I look at the tweets, and I sent this bracket out on Twitter to see who possible matchups would be, in the final 4, it was Cormier and Ngannou for Kyle Norris. And then in the other bracket, he had Bader taking on Miocic. Now, in this fight, Bader-Volkov, Volkov's super tall.
Way bigger.
He understands his range relatively well until the end of fights.
But
And
even
then, I mean, decent defensive wrestling to a point. You look at him in Bellator, he had a good run. I mean, got to the end of
his
the end
only
there.
loss in the UFC is to Derek Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. And that
He
was
knocked
that
out-
very last second
He
knockout.
knocked out Fabricio Verdum in the most brutal fashion possible.
And that was
you're
when
telling me-
Verdum was on an uptick.
Exactly. Verdum had been... That was when he was in that weird phase where he was fighting like every other weekend against pretty much everybody. And he was a huge favorite going into that fight. We both had Verdum to win that.
Yeah.
Craig might have, doesn't matter. But Volkov looked amazing in that. And for that performance itself, I really do feel like he beat Ryan Bader quite soundly. This is my thing. Ryan Bader is a good striker. He's not a great striker. The way that Ryan Bader gets caught, and it's happened multiple times, when Ryan Bader charges in when he can't get the takedown, he's one of these guys who, he's a really good wrestler, but he kind of gets frustrated if he can't get that takedown pretty quick. He's very much a decision fighter. I know he's had quite a few TKOs lately, but it's been against guys like King Mo and Fedor, who definitely aren't their primes at this point. That's the thing. He might be winning but he's winning against much lesser competition than Volkov. Volkov might not win every fight at heavyweight in the UFC, but the guys who he's fighting, at least they are top echelon heavyweights.
And I know you're not going to like this. Ryan Bader on a 7-fight win streak, Ilir Latifi knockout. And listen, this 7-fight win streak came off of the Anthony Johnson knockout where I believe Johnson was on top and had wrist control and then beat him with the other hand.
He pounded his head into the
ground. He pounded him. So then he came back, knocks out Ilir Latifi, knocks out Antonio Ruggiero Nogueira.
Who was 73.
Then the Phil Davis fight, which was really close when he joined Bellator.
It was so hard to watch.
People were really nervous in that one for him. Then he beats Linton Vassell. Then he beats King Mo, which that one was tough. The Mitrione fight surprised me because there were a lot of people that had Matt Mitrione going all the way. Yeah, that was a good win.
I did too, don't get me wrong. But when you look at it, they match up horribly. Ryan Bader is a phenomenal wrestler. You know what Matt Mitrione can't do? Wrestle. That's the thing.
I think a football guy could wrestle.
Well, okay, no. But look at Brennan Schaub. Not a great wrestler. But that's the thing. Ryan Bader's beaten all these guys, but when you look at them, how many of them were really in their prime when he fought them? Fedor, of course not. Matt Mitrione, no. King Mo, no. Linton Vassell, we've seen he's not really a championship caliber fighter. Phil Davis, I'll give him that. That was a good win. It was a terrible fight, though, and you have to admit to that.
It wasn't great.
No, Guerra was older than time itself at that point. And the Latifi fight was good, but he also got dropped pretty bad in that, and it was sort of a lucky knee.
The one thing I will say about those fighters, and kind of tease it a little bit, Linton Vassell is a guy that fighting at 205, at 265, Linton Vassell looks like an absolute monster.
But here's the thing: at 205, he didn't look good at all. His only position was if he got on top of you and got into mount. That was it. For that reason, I think Alexander Volkov has to beat Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader's been chinny in the past. He's been knocked down and out multiple times. And I just don't think his wrestling would be good enough to get it done against Volkov.
This is one for you. So if you're following along,
you know what?
Hit us up in the comments.
You guys get to pick the winner.
Let us know who you would pick in this fight. Personally, we're gonna move forward. I get a bye just in this one, going with Ryan Bader in this fight to beat Volkov, but it would be close. So there you have it. There is the Elite 8 of this bracket. So Minikov, Cormier, and Ngannou, Jones. Then you get Stipe taking on Overeem. Ali Akbari, Bader, excuse me. We have some decent fights here. So let's look through it, Matt, and try and figure this one out.
Okay, so the easiest one, Daniel Cormier would pick up Vitaly Minikov over his head, slam him on his neck, and break it. That's the easiest fight.
The Minikov-Emelianenko fight is closer than the Cormier-Minikov fight is. Like in this fight, I think Daniel Cormier would come in at about a -800 to -1,000 favorite.
He would pepper him to the body, hold him up against the cage, trip him to the ground, take his back, and choke him.
And Minikov's a good fighter, but
Daniel Cormier's
that much better. So Cormier's an easy one. That's a win. Yep. Let's look at one more. Stipe, Alistair Overeem. We've seen this fight. And
Stipe did tap, but the ref didn't see it, so you've got to give it to Miocic.
Stipe in this fight, I mean, listen, we're going to get to see him taking on Cormier later on this summer. Realistically, yeah, he's going to move on over a fight against Alistair Overeem, and I think that would be a fairly easy win from there. So let's go back up. Ngannou John Jones is
such a compelling fight.
One of the most fun fights that we've seen yet in this bracket.
But the crazy thing is, it's going to be extremely one-sided. We just don't know which side it's going to land on.
So Francis Ngannou's reach is actually going to be really close to John Jones. It's about 1.5 inches difference between the two of these guys.
Which Jones isn't used to.
And John Jones, we saw it in the fight against Thiago Santos this past weekend. Range wasn't that great, and Santos was able to just run in.
Now,
you can see chinks in the armor at this point.
I agree 100%. I feel like John Jones, for the first time ever, kind of starting to look beatable. I don't know if it's that he's just been in this for a long time, and, at a certain point, everyone's going to drop off. But when you look at it, and we're all big Anthony Smith fans, but he probably should have been able to finish Anthony Smith when you just look at where both guys were in their career. Anthony Smith put up a pretty good fight in that. And Thiago Santos, who I know we've been really high on, he's got this crazy highlight reel. He's extremely exciting to watch. Fights like 9 times a year too, so it's easier for the casual people to kind of follow along with him too. Thiago Santos almost beat him with one leg. He tore everything in his left leg in the second round.
Damage to the other knee as well.
Exactly. And it was one of those things where I feel like we've seen, okay, John Jones has a few weaknesses. We've always known that his straight boxing wasn't phenomenal, but he's always been one of these guys who, he doesn't really throw combos. It's just you never know what he's going to throw. He'll throw a left flying elbow into a right leg kick, into a right uppercut. He's very unorthodox with the way he puts his combinations together. But when he moves backwards, he kind of gets almost froze for a second. We saw every time Thiago Santos was putting combination together, moving forward.
You'd see him move to one side, and it wasn't like he was dynamic when he moved. He kind of, like you said, he'd freeze in place and leave himself vulnerable to I was going to say punches to strikes.
Yes.
Because we saw it after the fight, a large welt on the thigh of Jon Jones, and I know the broadcast team was maybe not hard on him, but they were pretty quick to point out, listen, he has really thin calves. So if you can work a leg kick, and listen, Francis Ngannou's knocking down small men in the gym with his leg kicks, and he employed that in his last fight against Dos Santos.
The good thing for Jon Jones going into this fight is if he can get past that first round, he should win it. That storm is so big to weather in that first round. If Francis Ngannou comes close to hitting you, you're probably going to go to sleep. Here's three things we do know about Jon Jones, though. He does have an amazing chin. We've seen him get cracked by a lot of people. Lyoto Machida kind of wobbled him. Thiago Santos hit him with a lot of good shots. But I feel like that almost is a benefit to Jon. And I thought Santos actually did win that fight. I don't think you can get too upset no matter how it went. It was a pretty close fight. But Jon ate big shots, and he did survive them. Problem is, you can't eat shots against Francis Ngannou. You can't really rely on your chin. I know Stipe did it, but he's Cleveland tough. He just made a different stuff. I think Jon Jones would win this fight. I really do. But I think Francis Ngannou right now, seeing the somewhat deficiencies that Jon Jones is at least starting to show, and the fact that he's not going to be the biggest guy at heavyweight, which is a luxury that he's had for most of his career at light heavyweight, I'm going to go Francis Ngannou to go into the next round. I don't love that pick. I'm not happy that I made it, to be quite honest, but I'm going Francis Ngannou.
Ngannou's one large man who, and listen, it's tough to predict the mental aspect of fighting. You hear it in sports all the time. So-and-so soft. I think that conversation is absolute garbage. I hate that conversation.
Kwame Brown?
You have no idea what's going through a fighter, an athlete's mind. Same thing with their bodies. You have absolutely no idea what their pain tolerance is, what type of injury they could have. People just don't come out and say it, and even if they do, you never know what they're actually thinking. But Francis Ngannou, the type of guy that he's gone back to France and he's had training camps there. Of course, we saw Dewey Cooper in his corner in his last fight, rocking the no sleeve, but still, Francis Ngannou's a guy who's overcome a lot. Those 2 losses in a row taught him a lot.
Exactly. He's constantly improving, and even though he's at the highest level.
A nick on your chin will knock you out against Francis Ngannou. And Thiago Santos hit Jon Jones with the kitchen sink with no... almost
push off.
Picture this, and this is going to be a tough analogy, but in baseball, you look at a guy like Prince Fielder.
Yeah,
such a
fat
big guy, and he had all that weight behind his bat, and when he just spin his hips and turn into that, he could knock that ball out of the park. Thiago Santos, if he had that lower half,
if he had the base to plant
if he was able to spin and he had that core motion, he would have gotten the knockout, but due to the knee issues...
Okay, maybe not the knockout, but he probably would have got the win.
But with the knee issues, he just didn't have that lower half to rely on, which we've seen him use in the past. So for Francis Ngannou, fully healthy, on a mission right now, I've got Ngannou to win that fight. And the only other fight that we have on here, Amir Ali Akbari taking on Ryan Bader. And listen, while this is a close fight...
I think Bader wrestles him.
Yeah, both guys possess pretty equal skills, and we've seen Ali Akbari able to get those finished knockouts, same as Ryan Bader. I just think right now, Ryan Bader, at the place that he's at in his career, I've got him to win that fight.
I agree to that one as well.
So we've got Bader winning that one. So in our final 4, Cormier taking on Ngannou. And Matt, what about the second fight here?
So Stipe and Ryan Bader. I think, again, this is a very easy fight to pick. Just hear me out. Ryan Bader, again, has good striking. No one on planet Earth would argue that he is a better striker than Stipe Miocic. Miocic is very good defensively, he's very good offensively, and he hits a hell of a lot harder. He also has a far better chin than Ryan Bader does. Here's the other thing, too. Ryan Bader really relies on his takedowns. He's probably not going to be able to take Stipe Miocic to the ground. Miocic is a phenomenal offensive, but mainly defensive wrestler. He likes to keep the fight standing. He uses his wrestling mainly to keep it on the feet. I know he switched up against Ngannou, but you really can't win a fight standing with Ngannou. I just feel like Stipe... They do a lot of the same stuff. It's just Stipe's bigger, is a little bit faster, hits quite a bit harder. So I don't see how he could really lose that fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting in this one, too, because you have to consider the fact that Stipe Miocic is one of those guys that typically weighs in around 240 pounds or so. Ryan Bader's going to weigh in about the same. So it's interesting to note just because guys that have been in that weight range have really found a lot of success in the last couple of years at heavyweight. You don't have to be somebody that has to cut to 265 to get wins. i.e. Justin Willis, a guy that the UFC doesn't even want to keep around, but still,
Justin Willis is no
I think you made a pretty good point. I mean, Miocic, while he's an offensive and defensive wrestler, he's got that crisp boxing, and he doesn't have to totally rely on the power, whereas he can throw a different series of combinations. Yeah. He can work some leg kicks in there. He's one of those
guys who he can go volume, and it can be light shot, and then it kind of opens up a hole, and then he cracks you with a big punch.
And the other thing, too, if he's going to be able to push the pace, which we've seen him do in multiple fights. I mean, look at the Junior Dos Santos fight. He just pushed him the whole fight up against the cage.
Even though he lost that one. Or the first one, yeah. I mean, Stipe's got some of the better cardio for any heavyweight. And like you said, I do feel like a big part of that is the fact that he doesn't have to cut all this weight. He's just like a big guy who's in good shape. That's really all he is. Yeah. He's not one of these guys he doesn't have any of these crazy physical attributes that like a Francis Ngannou or a Alistair Overeem have. He's just good all around.
100%. Really if we look at
but he's amazing at everything.
That other semifinal matchup, Daniel Cormier, Francis Ngannou. This is a fight that now let's focus on later on the summer. So you've got Cormier, Miocic. One of the two is going to win. Probably. Who's Francis Ngannou going to fight?
The winner.
Exactly. DC or Stipe. So this is kind of a fun one because this could be a possibility.
That's true.
The only issue is Daniel Cormier most likely going to retire after that fight. So in this one, we take them both right now. Cormier, excellent wrestling, tons of power at 265. He's just getting the job done day in, day out. Hard to hit. Francis Ngannou, we talked about so much in that John Jones match.
And now we're going to ruin him.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Daniel Cormier would be able to get the win there. I know. Listen, we saw what Jorge Masvidal did against Ben Askren, and you know how we predicted that fight to go.
I said Jorge would win.
No, Francis Ngannou could end up doing something.
Yeah, but I don't think he can throw a flying knee.
No, I mean no. But when Cormier shoots in for a takedown, Ngannou could hit him with an uppercut. I agree, just like Velasquez. We saw that against.
You're not wrong, but the difference is DC doesn't really go for double legs where he just shoots in for the takedown. He's going to get the clinch on you, hold you, put you up against the cage, trip you, and then take your back. That's the thing. John Jones might be a better fighter than Daniel Cormier, but Daniel Cormier matches up a whole hell of a lot better with Francis Ngannou than John Jones does. Because John Jones is going to keep the fight standing and take you down if he can. DC's going to take you down no matter what and keep the fight standing if he wants to. He's much more complex, I guess, in that aspect. And he's a combination thrower. Or a combination fighter. So this is how I would envision the fight going. If DC doesn't get knocked out in the first 10 seconds, I know Francis has improved his wrestling, and he's done very well against wrestlers, especially recently. It's just, he hasn't fought anyone like Daniel Cormier, and you can say, Cain Velasquez. Cain hadn't fought in, 3
years? Or Stipe.
Stipe beat the shit out of him. I just feel like DC would probably be able to get, a single leg on him, take him down. And once the fight is on the ground, I don't think it's one of those things where it's, Francis is pretty big and strong. He'll be able to get back up. I mean, DC, once he takes you down, we saw in the Volkan Oezdemir fight, kind of an obscure one to bring up. He took him down, with 10 seconds left, and then took his back and almost choked him out with less than 10 seconds. So just the efficiency in which he grapples with, and the cardio too. If this does go past the first round, that might be one of the most violent fights ever. I mean, DC would just beat the F out of him for 20 minutes, and it would look real bad.
So another fun one there. I have Cormier moving on as well, and listen, that just takes us to a fight that we're going to get.
242.
Yeah, that we're going to get later on this summer. Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. So we're a ways out from this fight actually happening, but as far as this heavyweight Grand Prix type of style, Royal Rumble type of style is concerned, you've got two guys that have gone through the damn ringer. I mean, for Stipe to get here, he had to beat Derek Lewis, Alistair Overeem, and Ryan Bader. For Cormier, it was Curtis Blades, Vili Minikov, Francis Ngannou. So realistically, for Cormier, the Blades and Minikov fight, probably not going to take a ton of damage. For Stipe, you consider it Derek Lewis, you never know.
That's what I was about to ask. Is this a one-night tournament?
No, it's not.
Okay, I was going to say.
But you have, a Royal Rumble's normally one night.
That's why I'm asking hard questions.
Let's say, hypothetically, we draw this out.
Okay, fair enough.
Miocic beats Lewis. Miocic Overeem, you never know how it could go. You know how the first one went, but
Overeem had a good moment. Yeah, he dropped Stipe. Just longevity-wise, Stipe is able to take those shots longer. That's why I would win.
And then Miocic taking on Bader, that could wear on him if the fight goes a long way.
But in all likely, he probably wouldn't take a lot of damage from it.
So both guys are going to be pretty damn close unless Cormier takes a ton of damage in the Ngannou fight, and he could just take him down. So realistically, you're going to get two fresh fighters, and we're going to pretty much get what we're due for later on this summer. So Cormier taking on Miocic the second time. Do you think Stipe's learned enough through this tournament, but also through the long layoff that he's had to get the win?
I do and I don't. Here's my only issue with that fight. If Stipe had taken one other fight in the meantime and looked really good again, I would say yes, Stipe has a pretty good chance of winning this. It's just, in my mind, when DC beats you at the one... or DC beat him in the one aspect we thought Stipe would have the advantage in. He beat him in the stand-up. And I know Stipe did kind of get sort of a bit of a takedown on DC, but DC doesn't mind that. His whole game plan is to grapple anyways. It was a really good point, Dominic Cruz, during the broadcast of that fight, because I just went and rewatched it. Daniel Cormier does a lot of things grappling that allows you to get better positions on himself because he knows how to get out of them just like that. Yeah. So he'll put himself in poor positions grappling-wise just because he knows, I'm so good at this. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu and I'm an Olympic wrestler. Like, it doesn't get much more better on the ground. So just the fact that he beat Stipe at his own game in the first fight, and let's say it does go rounds 3, 4, and 5. Yes, Stipe has good cardio for a heavyweight. He has heavyweight cardio. Daniel Cormier's got just... anyone cardio. He can go forever.
One other point to add to that too, Stipe Miocic to spend his career at heavyweight. Daniel Cormier moving up to heavyweight gains more in certain categories. And this cardio is going to be one of them.
And it was a really interesting point. I remember hearing it was an interview with Daniel Cormier, and he was saying how much he likes fighting at heavyweight because he's so used to being at light heavyweight. He says that they're just so slow. He can see their strikes coming so much easier. Because when you go from fighting prime Alexander Gustafsson, Rumble Johnson, John Jones, like there's so much to deal with it all the time. Now you're going to heavyweight where, let's be honest, there's not a lot of kicks at heavyweight to the body or to the head. It's very light kick and boxing dominated. So if you're a guy like Daniel Cormier and you have every tool in the shed to use, I just don't see a lot of guys at heavyweight beating you. Maybe John moves up and that's a compelling fight. But personally, I see it going a lot similar to the first fight between Miocic and Cormier. The only difference is I feel like if Cormier gets the takedown, he should be able to probably choke Miocic out. So I'll say I'll win by finish, but I'll go by submission, not by knockout.
So you're taking Cormier in this fight.
In a very long, drawn-out way.
As far as odds are concerned, right now Cormier's sitting at about a minus 144. You get Stipe Miocic plus 119.
It's odd that the odds... I really would have thought that DC would have been like a 2-1 favorite going into this, just due to the fact that we've seen him be more consistent since their last fight, and he beat him in pretty dominant fashion the first time.
It's kind of neat that we actually have odds for the end of this heavyweight Grand Prix Royal Rumble, but yeah, I mean, as far as it is concerned, I think Cormier just gaining on what he's been able to accomplish lately. You do have to try and block out the John Jones fights, and it's tough because, I mean, they were both finishes, but...
No, they weren't.
The first one was a decision. The second one was such a bad finish.
But here's the good thing, though. DC looked really good in that fight up until that head kick. That's one of the positives that we can draw. Exactly. That's one of the positives we can draw upon. Just if they did ever fight a heavyweight, DC arguably won the first 2 rounds. They were very close, but I had it 1 round apiece. Anyways, it was a close fight, and it was starting to look like Daniel Cormier would have been able to win if he didn't get finished.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going to look at that tournament, and Mike, I really do hope that we answered your question a little bit, but in a heavyweight Royal Rumble, it's Daniel Cormier over Stipe Miocic. It's UFC 242. Matt, now let's get into one of the best segments on the show. It's time for the Twitter Purge.
It's time for the Twitter Purge.
Matt, it's going to be pretty damn hard to follow up an intense, hypothetical heavyweight Royal Rumble between some of the best heavyweights in the world. But it's time for the Twitter Purge. And listen, we're pulling some of the most interesting news tidbits from the internet. And listen, we didn't focus too much on a UFC 239 recap. But, yeah, man.
Ben Askren.
Jorge Masvidal.
He okay?
Getting it done. So the question right now, and I mean, this is just one reaction, but Jorge Masvidal sets the record for the quickest UFC knockout. He spent about, I want to say 3/4 of a second looking like a cool guy up against the cage.
He had his hands on his back and he walked away from Ben Askren almost, and then he ran as fast as he could and launched his knee into Ben Askren's head.
And it was something that he'd worked on with Mike Brown and everyone at ATT. So Jorge Masvidal gets the win. And listen, he had, 2 losses before.
Yeah,
Then he took a year and a half off. He was on a Telemundo reality show. Then he comes back and automatically gets placed against a guy who most recently fought for...
Darren Till.
Yeah, the division's title, and Darren Till gets the win there.
Looked amazing.
Gets an extra punch in on Leon Edwards.
3. Then
he comes into this fight against Ben Askren, full head of steam, but you and I picked Askren. A lot of people picking Askren in that fight.
And for the sole purpose that of course Masvidal's a way better he's way more well-rounded than Askren.
Yep.
Just that one thing Askren does, he does it so well.
Go back and listen to what we said. That's exactly what we said, but we just, you figure...
Sorry we didn't predict Jorge Masvidal was going to fly knee Ben Askren in 3 seconds. My bad, guys.
But still, you look at Jorge Masvidal, and the question has to be, and this was a question before the fight, well, what's next? Because you have Colby Covington taking on Robbie Lawler at UFC Newark. That was more than likely going to be a title eliminator. And now, all of a sudden, Jorge Masvidal is the talk of the town. He's all over Twitter. He's in the Twitter purge. He gets that crazy win. You have to think he deserves a title
Exactly.
shot.
You can't beat... That was probably the most high-profile fight on that card of the biggest card of the year so far. So you were the most high-profile fight on the biggest card. You had the fastest knockout ever against a guy who's never even lost a round, much less a fight. And then you had this big viral moment afterwards. I mean, it was on World Star Hip Hop. It was on ESPN. Like, it was more... It's not like just people who bought the pay-per-view know that knockout.
I wrote an article about it.
Yeah, like, it was all over the internet. You couldn't miss it, even if you don't pay attention to MMA. It was one of the craziest knockouts you will ever see in MMA. And he gave a great promo after the fight, too. And his post-fight interview, I guess, after he got to the back talking to media. It was really good just to hear... He's not playing a character. It's not one of those people, like, with Colby Covington, you're like, oh, well, half the stuff he says, he definitely doesn't believe. Like, he's just doing it as a thing. Jorge Masvidal believes everything he says. Like, and I hate it how people use, yo, man, he's real. But, like, he kind of is. Like, don't mess with Jorge Masvidal.
This is the return of the journeyman. We saw it with Donald Cerrone. All of a sudden, he's getting into a title picture. Anthony Smith gets a title shot. Jorge Masvidal has 47 professional fights. In 2008, he had a backyard brawl or backyard fight against Ray, the mysterious Ray, who was Kimbo Slice protege. And he already had just under 10 professional fights at that point. I believe he was 7-2. He went into Strikeforce. He fought for the promotions title against then just a world beater in Gilbert Melendez. And even before that, in 2009, he competed at Bellator 1 in the main event, which is crazy. And that was the fight after an Eddie Alvarez fight, which is hard to believe. It was the quarterfinal of the Bellator Season 1 lightweight tournament. So he wins that fight. The next one, he lost to Toby Amada. And then he just moved on. We saw him have, good fights in Strikeforce, a decent run in the UFC, and all of a sudden, and that wasn't even in Strikeforce.
No, that was in Island Fight?
Yeah,
Jungle Fight? It was in a
weird organization, but Jorge Masvidal, all of a sudden, one of the biggest stars in MMA to boot, and what a story. And another story, if we look back at UFC 239, Song Yadong, I mean, listen, this was a guy that I picked to beat Alejandro Perez.
As did I.
And we look at this 360 cam from the UFC. I thought he hit him on the collarbone when we were watching it.
That's a whole lot of chin he caught.
That was one of the most intense knockouts. And this is a guy, we won't try and predict who he's going to fight next. It's really tough, especially in some of those lighter weight classes. But, man, like, what a win for him. And really boosts his stock with a finish like that.
He's got insane power. He's got lightning fast hands too. He's a great all-around fighter and a really good prospect in a market that they're trying to grow right now. So really the sky's the limit for Song Yadong. You know how sometimes you'll see prospects and on their way up you're like, they're definitely good, but I just can't see them being in title picture. I don't see any ceiling like that on Song Yadong. I definitely think that he could be one of those guys. And maybe we're completely wrong. He gets knocked out in his next fight, but he's one of those guys who just seems like he's got everything he needs to keep on moving forward in the division. So definitely a bright prospect to look out for.
So the next bit of news
Campbell living his best life.
Yeah. So Campbell McLaren was on, he did an interview with a Spanish outlet, and give credit where credit's due, with Gonzalo Campos MMA. I saw this pop up like when it broke. So I sent a tweet out there and said, who asked for this fight? So it was announced by Campbell McLaren. They're trying to fight in Spain. So they're trying Madrid. Apparently Madrid's a little difficult to try and host some fights. AFL's been trying to kickstart.
I didn't know that.
They've been trying to kickstart a big event. They've got some Bellator and UFC vets looking to take part and boosting it that way. And it's good to see international MMA grow. So hopefully that card goes well.
Tom Dugan will come back.
They're able to pay some of the stars. But you look at this. So Combate. I take them serious, but I don't take them all that serious because Campbell McLaren's a fun guy, but I think he fluffs the numbers kind of like a Dave Feldman.
Kind of like a Chatry.
Yeah, it does right now.
I don't know if you guys know, but one championship was shown in front of 90 billion people.
So it's a little tough on that front, but he announces that Tito Ortiz and Alberto Del Rio are going to fight.
Pride veteran.
Yeah, I mean, Alberto Del Rio, if you don't know, WWE heavyweight champ at one point.
Highlight of his career, he once wore a black mask and fought Mirko Cro Cop at Pride and got brutally head kicked.
And listen, he hasn't fought in over 9 years. Tito Ortiz last fought in November. Tito Ortiz is 40...
Yeah, but is it really a fight when you fight Chuck Liddell, who's 73?
Tito Ortiz is 44 years old. Alberto Del Rio is 42 years old. It's a fight that nobody asked for, nobody wanted, but Campbell McLaren's going to give it to us. And I had one person on Twitter tell me, you're way off base. Like, people are going to pay for this. MMA fans want to see this, and you're going to get a crossover from WWE fans. And while I think you will get a cross-section of wrestling fans that will watch this, and it's a tough one because Alberto Del Rio at one point, and right now, I did my digging, he's no longer the president of Combate. He was the president of the MMA organization. Matt talked about his pedigree. He's a legit MMA fighter. Yeah. But nobody wants this. Like, he's going to lose, man.
You can say, oh, yeah, it's going to get crossover audience from both, but you could have said the same thing about Artem Lobov fighting Paulie Malignaggi, and that had crazy media behind it. It seemed to have quite a bit of traction amongst people online. And I'm sure that maybe
18,000 buys.
Exactly. So, and you can say, oh, well, I mean, Artem Lobov, yeah, he's kind of a meme, but he does have quite a big following in the MMA world. And Paulie Malignaggi, for better or for worse, was quite well known in boxing. So you think, oh, well, that's probably going to do decent pay-per-view buys. And they came out and they were like, oh, it did 200,000. And then the real numbers came out and they said 18,000, 32 at the highest, I want to say. So it completely flopped. And I feel like this is a lot of the same thing. I feel like MMA fans as a total, they're starting to get smarter. It was sort of, there was that big casual wave, and I don't mean that as a negative thing. It was just when Conor and Randa were kind of at the top of the world, there was a bunch of people who, they only watch MMA for those two. And I feel like at this point, some of them have stuck around and they've started following people like Jorge Masvidal, people like Max Holloway, who they're starting to gain more of a star. But a lot of them have kind of been weeded out by now, and there's a lot more hardcores now, especially with it being on ESPN. A lot more people can follow it.
Especially with the moves to The Athletic recently. I mean, that's The Athletic as far as other sports are concerned. Listen, you're not going to want to hear us say this, and we don't talk too much about other sports either, and we're big sports fans. But basketball, baseball, hockey, if you look at The Athletic, they have the best of the best in writers. I mean, Pierre LeBrun talking about hockey, Ken Rosenthal in baseball, Jason Stark, and then you look at it with MMA, I mean, Chuck Mindenhall. Who else do they have? Fernando Paredes. I mean, they've got some of the best out there right now.
Sean had that great article about Michael Bisping there last week.
Exactly. A lot of great articles there. So I think you make a really good point there. And if we continue on, another one of the best of the best of MMA journalism, you got Damon Martin. And according to Forbes, Conor McGregor is on their top 100 highest paid celebrities, not just athletes, celebrities of 2019, ahead of Chris Evans. And Chris Evans is one of the top grossing actors out there. So first of all,
couldn't care less.
In listening to a recent podcast, I know I listened to Pardon My Take today. One of the bets, actually Spit and Chickless, one of the bets that they were talking about, which fighter is going to go broke quicker? In the next 10 years, will it happen? McGregor or Mayweather?
Mayweather.
Everybody pretty much sided with Mayweather. And you look at this, McGregor being on this list, it's not because he fought a lot last year.
Them whiskey sales.
It's not. Whiskey's really been a good parlay for him, so it's kind of neat to see that there. On Twitter, an interesting thing to pass along. And another interesting thing, 278-pound Anthony Rumble Johnson, who at one point in the not-so-distant past used to weigh in at 170 pounds for fights if he didn't miss weight, took on a man with a perfect first name in Craig Jones. But, Craig Jones getting that quick submission in the main event of Submission Underground 9.
If you didn't think this was going to happen, you just probably shouldn't. Like, I know Chael Sonnen was like, can he submit the 280-pound Anthony Rumble? Well, of course he can. Rumble was never known for jiu-jitsu. Craig Jones, every day, all he does is jiu-jitsu. Oh, and he's trained in ripping people's knees apart. So if you have a guy who doesn't have great submission defense against a guy who the only thing he does is submissions, in a sport where all you can do is submissions, what do you think's going to happen?
I tell you one thing. I want to see the most dangerous fight in all of combat sports.
Ngannou versus 300-pound Rumble.
Give Gordon Ryan the toughest fight of his life in the first fight in MMA. I want Gordon Ryan and Anthony Johnson. I know it can happen against a big grappler in this fight. I don't know what Gordon Ryan's striking is going to be like. I want this fight. Make it happen.
No commission would sanction it.
Yeah, they would.
No, they wouldn't. Unless
Make
they're
it
fighting in
happen.
Japan.
Now, you make a good point. Commission's not sanctioning fights.
Segue.
Sarah Kaufman. Fight's not going to happen in PFL, of course.
I think she's going to win the tournament.
We found out today that her opponent missed weight, so she's supposed to be fighting this Thursday at PFL's next event. I mean, listen, a great run in Invicta, a fairly decent run in the UFC.
I mean, she only lost a split decision to Valentina Shevchenko.
Exactly. And then, you want to focus further down the road. The two best fighters in this season of the lightweight tournament in PFL, Sarah Kaufman and Kayla Harrison. And while Kayla Harrison's looked great, and listen, PFL's put a huge marketing
push. If she
push.
cries after a win one more time, I'm going to start throwing things.
They've put more money into Kayla Harrison than they have any other fighter that I've seen. I see promos for Kayla Harrison all week, all the time. There might not even be a fight coming up, and I see Kayla Harrison on Twitter. And I think it's awesome. I honest to goodness, I think it's one of the neatest things that you have a women's lightweight fighter that's getting promoted this much. But I do think, too, I mean, Sarah Kaufman has so much experience. And while, Kayla Harrison is such a good judo practitioner, her forward motion, and listen, her wrestling's not that bad. It's pretty good.
She's just very reckless and very new in her career. And that's what worries me if she does fight someone like Sarah Kaufman. Kayla Harrison's striking isn't good at all. She's very... You remember that gif of Randa when she's shadowboxing and she's just kind of like going like this, and Dana White's like, she could probably beat Floyd Mayweather. It's kind of like that. Like, she's very reckless and she doesn't keep her hands up. She just kind of throws big, heavy strikes, which isn't a bad thing. And this isn't a knock, but in lower level women's MMA, you can kind of get away with that a little bit more. You just kind of be wild and hit hard, and you're going to go really far. And maybe she does beat Sarah Kaufman, but if she does, it's more of a size advantage than skill advantage. I really do feel like Sarah Kaufman's a much more skilled fighter.
Featherweight, too.
Exactly. Oh, well, bantamweight, I mean.
Yeah, but yeah, it should be a good fight. Hopefully that's what we get. And then kind of a really big piece of news that I don't know if it got as much traction.
The views are actually pretty good on the videos.
I thought on Twitter, like I saw this automatically retweeted it and thought it was a huge deal, but there wasn't too much behind it. And listen, MMA fighting, it sucks because they've lost a lot of top talent, and they still have a lot of great people. I mean, Jose Youngs, Danny Segura, Alexander K. Lee, Damon Martin, the list goes on. There's a lot of great people at MMA fighting, but it just
like
sucks
the top tier has kind of been cut off.
I mean,
not even top tier, just the faces of it, I should say.
That's a better point. And I mean, Luke Thomas leaving MMA Beat, MMA Hour. He still has his radio show right now. Jimmy Smith's kind of covering that as it is on Sirius XM. But Luke Thomas teaming up with Brian Campbell. We saw them on the Beat. Maybe we get some cameos from Segura, Chuck Mindenhall.
I'm sure they will.
I mean, and others, the others
Brian
that are
Kelleher,
on the Beat. But yeah, I mean, we got this show called Morning Combat. To me, it's a little strange, and I know like Luke Thomas and Brendan Schaub are friends.
They're boys.
It's Below the Belt with Brendan Schaub. That's the show that they have. They're branding this as below the belt type of content. If you're going to do that, have it just below the belt, not with Brendan Schaub. And also, this is all under the Showtime banner. If you were to just find this, and this is the first time you saw a Luke Thomas show or the first time you saw Below the Belt, you're going to be incredibly confused. So it's really weird marketing. And these are two recognizable figures, so let them have their own thing on Showtime.
And here's the weird thing, too. It's just their styles don't really mesh all that well. Brendan Schaub's kind of like the Hollywood insider of MMA reporters. Like, he's very gossip-esque almost.
I'll say one other thing.
Yes.
He does a really good job with shows that he has on Showtime. Like, people eat it up. Brendan Schaub, he does a good job with Food Truck Diaries.
The shows are good.
He does a good job with
they're very digestible.
And they're entertaining.
Yeah, if you don't like to think a lot, they're definitely shows for you. But I feel like it's just Luke Thomas. He has a much different style than Brendan Schaub, and I feel like the people who watch Brendan Schaub for himself might not want the in-depth analysis that Luke Thomas might give you. And I agree. It would be a lot better if it was just below the belt channel. If they did it like All Things Comedy, for instance, it's owned by Bill Burr, and it's kind of like the parent company, and then it has a bunch of shows.
If you like the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, you can catch me on Between the Links, but there's the Breakdown Show with Marcel and Max. There's the Not Safe for Work podcast.
Exactly. If it was just, this is kind of like the brand, and here's all the shows underneath, it would be a lot better than if it's, here's Brendan Schaub, and these guys work for him.
And I think they will, they will because this, not that it was rushed, but it was a week later. And if you did watch the first show, it was good, but it was pretty much Monday Morning Analyst with a TV and a cement background. and Luke Thomas, playing with an iPad on a table. But I'm sure in future weeks there's going to be a bigger studio. It's going to get bigger and better. And listen, I think both guys are going to be on the up and up. Of course, Brian Campbell's a great mind in boxing, but also in MMA. And they're both really entertaining guys, and I wish them nothing but the best. I think it's a good move for both of these guys.
So do I, and it's nice to see both of them get under the Showtime banner, because it seems like everyone is moving to ESPN, but competition's good for everyone. So it's nice to see Showtime at least has, maybe not the best journalist, but more of the entertaining side of the journalism scene, I guess, under their banner. So I think it'll work out for everyone.
So 2 great pickups for Showtime. Looking forward to more from
Send us some money.
Morning Combat with Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell, of course, below the belt with Brendan Schaub. And that just about wraps us up for the Twitter Purge, Matt. Let's get into a bit of a recap and a preview of the weekend that was and the weekend that will be. All right, Matt. So, a recap of the weekend that was. We talked about it from the outset. UFC 239, you had plenty of great fights. So let's zoom through.
Some big upsets, too.
Let's zoom through some of the prelims quickly. And Matt, in a fight that you and I, we were back and forth on, the first fight of the night, Julia Avila taking on Pannie
Kianzad. Said, Matt, the fight that you were right on, but it's all good.
Listen, I went 9-3 with my picks. I think I did pretty good, but
I got every fight in the main card right, oddly enough.
As far as this one was concerned, you have 2 UFC debuts, Avila and Kianzad. Avila was a favorite in this one, more than a 2-1. Man, I mean, you can see it just from the striking totals, and that's where a lot of the fight took place. Julia Avila looked really, really good in her debut.
And she had a lot of pop behind her shots, too. It wasn't just the volume. Her shots were doing a lot more...
damage,
yes,
for sure.
Sorry, forgot words.
And Kianzad, by the end of the fight,
she was busted up. She was pretty tired. It was a great performance for Avila, though.
In the next fight, Chance Rencountre taking on Ismail Naurdiev, and this one surprised me.
Naurdiev can't wrestle to save his life.
Ismail Naurdiev just couldn't wrestle. We knew him as a striker, but Chance Rencountre actually looked pretty good in this fight.
He didn't look great. The only thing was it just seemed like he had the advantage in the wrestling, but he didn't do a lot with it. That was my only issue with his performance. I thought he looked really good, especially due to the fact that he was such a big underdog coming into this. But other than the fact that he secured the takedowns, he left a little bit to be desired.
So in the next one, Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Jack Marshman.
I have something I need to bring up.
Jack Marshman not landing a single strike, 0 for 7 in significant strikes, and Edmen Shahbazyan, did he look good or what?
He looked amazing, but here's the weird thing. Joe Rogan was like, Edmen Shahbazyan beat Jack Marshman. I can't believe it. Marshman's like this great veteran that he beat, and Shahbazyan should be in the top 15 after this. Jack Marshman was as much as, I think, a plus 800 underdog. Yeah. This was expected. So unless you don't know much about MMA, it wasn't a big shocker that Shahbazyan won this fight, and especially in the dominant fashion that he did. I mean, Shahbazyan, and we were hard on him, especially after the Darren Stewart fight, just due to the fact that I really feel like Stewart won that fight. He did a lot more damage to Shahbazyan. He actually hurt him quite a few times. But ever since that fight, I mean, Edmen just keeps on getting better and better and better, mainly because his head coach, other Edmen.
Head coach Ronda
Rousey. But no, he's definitely, his grappling just phenomenal, though. And he's really young. He's a blank canvas, pretty much, that just keeps on getting better every fight.
So a good win for him there. And in the next fight on the prelim portion of the card, we already covered it in a little bit of detail, but Song Yadong getting the win over Alejandro Perez, who was ranked at the time. Song Yadong, I mean, just move him up the rankings.
Yeah, calm down, young man.
Move him up as quickly as possible. You had another fight after this, which...
We could skip this fight completely. It was one of the worst fights.
It wasn't incredibly close, but Claudia Gadelha getting the win over Randa Markos. Randa Markos, of course, flip-flopping wins and losses. Gadelha getting the win here. Wasn't a huge surprise, but do you think she's back on track?
No, I don't. I don't think barely outstriking Randa Markos for 3 rounds gets you very much. And especially, women's strawweight's such a fun division right now. There's a lot of really good prospects moving up to the top. We got a new champion, of course, with Andrade. And she just looks so unbeatable. And especially, remember what she did to poor Claudia like a year and a half ago? And here's the thing. Andrade seems like she keeps on getting better and better and better. I know her style's always similar. She's very like Vanderlei Silva-esque with her hands up, but she does show improvements every fight.
And that's really interesting, and I'll move back over to that fight. It was an interesting note by the commentary team, and more importantly, it was Joe Rogan who said, this is a terrible stance by Randa Markos. She's leaving her chin out there. This is terrible. This is terrible. That's the way that Randa Markos fights every single time. She's heavy on her front foot. She keeps her head out and her hands up high like this. She fights like that every single fight. So to say it's ridiculous and everything, it might be, but she does it every single time.
And the weird thing was, too, when Randa does keep that stance, that kind of awkward one that she does have, she's usually going for takedowns. She didn't go for a single takedown in this fight. It was a very odd performance by her, and especially after she came off a really good win against Angela Hill. I know that doesn't mean a whole lot, but still, it was a good performance.
In our next fight, Man,
That was a great fight.
Marlon Vera, where he's a streaky type of guy, he's able to get it done. It was a really fun fight. A finish win for Vera. And it's really tough to predict for a guy like this in this division where he moves forward next. And I won't ask you that question. It's probably going to be
Sean O'Malley.
It's going to be a guy below 15, and hopefully we can see the Sean O'Malley fight. But man, like, what's the ceiling for a guy like Marlon Vera if he can string together wins and fights like this?
Well, it just seems like his problem is he's a slow starter. After he kind of knocks the rust off, in the second round, he might be the best second round fighter I've ever seen, but one of the worst first round fighters I've ever seen. It's one of those things where he has to get hit a few times for him to almost get into the fight, and that's exactly what happened in this. I mean, he was dominating up until a certain point, got hit a few times, got put in some bad positions, and I mean, Nohelin Hernandez actually looked really good in a losing performance. I feel like his son rose as well, because Marlon Vera, I feel like he's underrated, but a lot of people do realize that he is a very skilled prospect. And yeah, it was a really good fight back and forth, and then Vera ended up hitting him with that like kind of double flying knee and then taking his back and choking him out. But as you said, if he can just get more consistent, not from fight to fight, but just in one fight, if he can just start the fight like he starts the second round, I mean, the sky's the limit for him, because we've seen he's got phenomenal striking, really good Muay Thai. His ground game is amazing as well. So, yeah, if he keeps on improving too, he's going to be top 10, top 5 guy.
A Sean O'Malley type of fight makes a lot of sense because...
He's so fun.
And it's funny because I threw out... there was an interview that Robbie from Barstool did with Sean O'Malley in Vegas, and man, the people of Reddit do not like Sean O'Malley. The people of Twitter love him. The people of Reddit absolutely hate him.
He's an exciting guy to watch, though, and unfortunately he has had those PED... Well, not even PED issues, just tainted supplement issues.
It to me... Listen, you assume the risks.
To quote Stephen A. Smith, you got to stay off the weed.
That's another thing. Yeah. That's a controversial topic, but you know that you... And he hasn't been popped for it.
He hasn't.
But it's such a controversial...
It's a risky game to play.
It's like not pulling out. It's so risky. And he just keeps doing it. Oh, one of these days, it's going to go bad for him.
It can either end with a kid or a failed drug test. Only time will tell.
Now, one guy that won't fail a drug test,
falls out.
but his dad might fail a drug test. Arnold Allen taking on Gilbert Melendez.
What a segue.
And Arnold Allen, man, this is another one of those guys. Listen, it's a decision win, but
first of all,
that.
in that picture, he looks like he might have been snooping through his dad's medicine cabinet.
102 significant strikes to 23.
He beat the shit out of Gilbert Melendez.
Arnold Allen looked fantastic in this fight. This is a guy that only has one loss in his career. It's been since he's been with the UFC, but man, Arnold Allen looks so good every time he's out there. And this is a guy that... You can say positive things or negative things about TriStar. It is obviously one of the top gyms in the world. We've seen some fighters since they've left, and namely one that's been on the show, and John McDessie, that's found success post-TriStar.
Yeah, but it's not like he went from TriStar to a bad gym and saw success. He went to Rufus Sport, which clear champions do.
Arnold Allen, man, what a performance, especially in this kind of prelim setup. It's not that it's a setup type of fight, but it is. Arnold Allen, man, give the man a ranked opponent.
I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, it's Gilbert Melendez in the twilight of his career, and you're not wrong, but Gilbert Melendez, skill-wise, he's always kind of been the same. He does the same things, just not as the same level as he used to.
Let's not focus too much on this fight, but the one parting thought I will have with Gilbert Melendez, yeah, he might be in the twilight of his career, but he's of sound mind and body.
Exactly.
And
quit while you're ahead. Just do your analyst work.
If we move on to the main card, Diego Sanchez, Michael Chiesa, and if we look pre-fight, so Diego Sanchez had the towel. He can't be confined into a box. At the ceremonial weigh-ins, when he went to weigh in, he didn't weigh in. He ran to go hang out with Michael Chiesa and do the Diego Sanchez stance. And listen, Matt.
Oh, don't mind me. I'm just Diego Sanchez's corner man.
Now, we talked about this fight in great detail before. And listen, we pretty much predicted what was going to happen. I thought it would have been a finish for Chiesa, but still.
Michael Chiesa got his oil checked, as he said.
Michael Chiesa, after this fight, listen, I want the Kevin Lee number 2 fight. I think that one's fair. I think that one makes sense. There's all sorts of fights you can make for Chiesa, but for Diego Sanchez, and this is a question on Between the Links that was asked by Mike Heck. For Diego Sanchez, if you're a promoter, and after the fights, and we'll talk about it in more detail, but Dana White called out Luke Rockhold and said he should retire. He gave a nice send-off to Holly Holm if she chooses to retire. Do you tell Diego Sanchez, do you pull him behind the curtain and have a conversation with his one corner man? Do you say, like, maybe it's time to hang him up. Like, you've been a pioneer. Ultimate Fighter
He's gonna be in
Season
the Hall
1.
of Fame. Well, I guess he is.
He's already in the Hall of Fame this past week.
Here's the thing with Diego Sanchez, and Dana White did say, like, he's kind of got a special place in his heart for all those Season 1 Ultimate Fighter guys. So no matter what, Diego Sanchez will probably never have to worry money-wise. Just he should be looked after by the UFC for what he's done. And I feel like he would be. I don't think that they would kind of scam him because he has done quite a bit for the sport and he's a fan favorite. But Diego at this point in his career, and maybe this is unfair to point out, he just doesn't seem like he's all there, and I feel like a lot of that has been due to some of the head trauma. It's really unfortunate to see, and it is too bad. Like, we talk about fighters who do have other avenues after they retire. You brought up Gilbert Melendez. He does really good analyst work, and if you've ever seen the the technique ones that he does with Dominic Cruz, where they go through all the positions
with ESPN,
they're phenomenal.
If you watch that, I turned the TV on when I was in the States. Obviously, we're up here in Canada, so we don't get the same.
We
don't get the same material. But I turned on. I was in the hotel. Turned on ESPN. And it's Dominic Cruz and Gilbert Melendez breaking down technique, and they're grappling in the cage. How cool is that?
It's insane.
Yeah, he does great work.
There's other guys. Luke Rockhold has modeling to go to. Michael Bisping's in movies. He was in Twin Peaks.
And Diego Sanchez, there's a place for him in combat sports after fighting. Yeah, after fighting. But it was just kind of a shame to see the fight the way that it went.
He got his ass kicked in this pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, we go to the next one. A guy that
holy shit
goes from former champ to losing 3 of 4, getting knocked out.
All of them.
And then Jan Blachowicz, a guy who, I mean, he's had some bumps in the road, former KSW champion. You can say maybe that wasn't one of their, best divisions at the time.
He still detonated a nuclear bomb on Luke Rockhold.
Jan Blachowicz looked great.
That punch would have knocked out a horse.
So now the question is, after this fight, and if
you say title shot, I'm going to lose my mind.
I saved this article to my drafts, and I had to change it because I had predicted that Rockhold was going to win, but
I said Blachowicz, though.
We already talked about the main event. So what's next for John Jones, greatest of all time UFC light heavyweight?
Yep.
Okay, so there's Blachowicz. Then you've got
Anderson.
No. Then you've got Cormier, and then somewhere in between you could kind of sprinkle in the Johnny Walkers and Dominic Reyes and Rakic's of the division. Now, would you think that it would have to be Blachowicz? I mean, an insane finish. He's going to be at the top of the division. He's knocking on the door. I think he deserves that shot.
I agree and I disagree for this fact only. I feel like this... Askren said it, but we'll get to that after. I feel like if Rockhold won, it would have been a title shot. I sounded so southern right there. We'll get to that there after. But I feel like if Rockhold won, he would have got that title shot. But I just don't think that Jan is the level of star. And it is unfortunate. But here's the other thing, too. We just saw Jan get knocked out pretty badly by Thiago Santos, and that fight wasn't competitive.
The one thing I will say, John Jones is a main event pay-per-view type of star.
Yeah,
and even if you look at the numbers, I mean, top draw against Daniel Cormier was just about 800,000 pay-per-view buys. We also know an MMA, just insane nation. And listen, we got
That's true. Do the fight in Poland.
We got some pretty decent views from Polish fans, and they said some nasty things about us in the comments.
They did,
but
still hurt my feelings.
You could have a pay-per-view in Poland.
It's
easy to try and justify it. I mean, you look at KSW 39, the Colossus event. They had the second biggest attended MMA event in history behind one of the Pride events in Japan. So, yeah, that's pretty big numbers. You can also draw from all the other European nations that are close. You're going to get people from North America going. Poland's on the up and up right now, and I can't sell it enough. I think Jan Blachowicz and John Jones in Poland is a bigger deal than most people would think.
I agree with you to a certain extent. It's just, here's the thing. Let's just say they're throwing together highlight packages to hype this fight. When you get Thiago Santos against John Jones, you can show John Jones beating everyone, and Thiago Santos is knocking everybody out, and all of his fights are exciting. And again, he's super active, so people can kind of get attached to him. Jan Blachowicz maybe fights twice a year. Before this fight, he doesn't have a great highlight package. He's not great on the mic. I just don't know if that's as sellable. And I know the other options, you've got, Corey Anderson, that's selling 5 pay-per-view buys. Johnny Walker's not there just yet. I feel like he will be soon enough. Alexander Rakic in the same position as Walker. He's going to beat the brakes off a bunch of people. He just needs 2 or 3 more wins to get
And the other fight that a lot of people want to see, Dominic Reyes, that's a hard sell too. If you look at the Cormier fight for Jones, probably not going to happen.
No, and I feel like John at this point realizes that he's starting to show a few weaknesses, so he doesn't... Daniel Cormier is always going to be his hardest fight. It's the 2 greatest fighters ever fighting each other. He's going to beat everyone probably. So, it'll be interesting because it feels like light heavyweights is a really exciting division. It just, they're not giving guys enough time to actually get to that title shot. Like, they're kind of rushing the next guy
And
up.
they just want to build on Jones' legacy. And if we move on to the next fight, a guy who, wants to build on a legacy, a guy who's had 47 professional fights. We covered this in detail in the Twitter purge, but Jorge Masvidal, Ben Askren, enough said.
But here's the thing. Where does Askren go from here? Because we're assuming Masvidal gets a title shot off this. Askren didn't really announce retirement. He didn't allude to retirement. It seems like that's not even something on his mind. So who would you see him going against? Personally, I looked to the Darren Till fight. There was some animosity going into that. They both coming off knockout losses to Masvidal.
And Till had nice things to say about Askren after this fight. And this was a question that was asked on Between the Links. So go check that out. Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. I threw out one possibility, actually. And I slagged a lot of people on their guesses. I really gave Keyshawn a hard time. His pick was Damian Maia, and I've seen that one float out there before. I saw Aaron Bronstetter tweeting about it a little bit. And my exact response was, do you want to see Ben Askren at a press conference basically talking to a watermelon at a grocery store? Do you want to see that?
Because it would be him talking a bunch of shit and then Damian Maia going, I just love jiu-jitsu.
That's all you're going to get.
That was a great Damian Maia impression.
Darren Till makes sense. The name that I threw out there, a guy that's well-rounded, a guy that can sell maybe a main event of a fight night. Ponzinibbio, no, that's too dangerous. You want to fight that Askren might be able to win to get right back up there. It's a ranked opponent. It's a guy you're not going to like.
Let me just guess.
It's a very, very long type of fighter. Very long. One of the longest fighters in the UFC. Neil Magny. I think that fight makes sense.
It's an awful fight for Neil Magny, but I guess you could do that.
He's had bad matchups in the past.
Hasn't stuff.
He's won some and he's lost some.
How crazy is it? He beat Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a real
it's
thing.
Crazy to think of, but I think for Ben Askren, you got to give him some time off.
No, that was a good pick.
Don't rush him. This is his first loss. He's been rocked before, but this is his first.
But
he got rocked in his last fight.
Yeah,
but I mean, give him some time off.
I mean, not many guys have had two as exciting fights as he had in their first two UFC fights.
Whew, she's a wave, a win and a loss, and then in our co-main. Amanda Nunes taking on Holly Holm, a fight that shouldn't have happened. You can see it from the numbers.
Remember that time we said this fight's not going to be close and Amanda's going to finish her? Probably people should, maybe listen to her.
And Nunes, to her credit, pretty much did what Floyd Mayweather does in 7 or 8 rounds in 4 minutes and a few seconds. Downloaded the information, played it cool for the first 3 minutes, then decided to go, I'm going to beat Holly Holm at her game and
cool.
Toss the Holly Holm combo.
Amanda Nunes is an amazing feinter. And I know that that's a weird thing to say, but it's very true.
Just like TJ Dillashaw.
Just like TJ. I was thinking more like Israel Adesanya, but Amanda Nunes is really good at just faking. And she'll commit to some, she'll not commit to some.
Like TJ Dillashaw, I'm not on juice, but also here's my clean juice bar.
Exactly, but she does a lot of things that make you, it's kind of like misdirection. It's like a magician on Egyptian. It's look over here, and then I'm going to do something over here. And it's worked out amazing for her. She really set up Holly, leg kick, body kick, and she kept on, really going real heavy on the right hand, but not really throwing it, and then really going heavy on it, and throwing it at kind of like different paces. So she'd throw it really hard once, and then she'd slow down. And then you saw, even in like the 30 seconds leading up to the knockout, Amanda was taking over that fight. She was blasting her to the body, to the head. She had one really nice straight right that looked like kind of stunned Holly. Then she went like body kick, right hand, and you're like, oh shit, Amanda's starting to take over. And then she kind of caught Holly. Everyone makes so much out of those GD oblique kicks. Yes, they're really good, but they put you in a terrible position because when you're on one foot, you can't really move. And Holly kind of didn't really commit to one, and that was a problem. She was basically on one leg leaning back, and Man Nunes just blasted her with a head kick. And she didn't even hit her with her shin. She hit her with like her foot hit off the top of her head. If that was a clean kick, like shin to skull, Holly's still probably out. But Amanda Nunes is never going to lose. She's the greatest ever. And if you don't like watching Amanda Nunes fight, I don't know what to tell you.
The one thing that I don't like, it's by news outlets, it's by Chris Cyborg herself, it's kind of by the UFC, it's a bit of a push. Let's see the rematch. Chris Cyborg has a fight coming up, man. Like, I get it. She's probably going to win.
Oh, yeah.
But give me a break.
And
like, at least acknowledge that Felicia Spencer has a chance.
Here's the other thing, too. It's not like this is Cyborg of 2012. Cyborg's definitely on the decline. I don't know. I don't think I'm breaking news right now. She's not the fighter she used to be. She can't just walk in, hands up like this, and just engage everybody. And maybe she can against lower level competition, but when you fight someone like Amanda Nunes, like, I was thinking, I almost put this out as a tweet. I almost put, good thing Nunes' ground game's not that great. Oh, wait. She's a super high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. If she takes you to the ground, there's a good chance she takes you back and chokes you out. She's an amazing wrestler, has really good Jiu-Jitsu, amazing striking, big power, too. Oh, and her cardio is good all of a sudden. So there's not really an aspect that you can beat her in all of a sudden. And Cyborg has a very one-dimensional game plan. I don't think Cyborg is going to come in, let's say they do have the rematch, and start throwing Yair Rodriguez-esque kicks. She's still going to be the same Cyborg. Hands up like this, moving forward, winging big shots. And if that's your only hope to win, you're not going to be technical or even fast enough to deal with someone like Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally insane the way that she was able to get it done. She's got those 2 belts there. Of course, one of them's nice, shiny, and new. And then you've got the old featherweight belt, and it'll be interesting to see what's next for her. I mean, first of all, it's got to be a huge payday. I know Darren Ravel out there doesn't think that she's a bankable star, but listen, she's as bankable as a star as you're ever going to get.
LGBTQ community should latch on to her. That's feminism. Like, you have a Brazilian who came from nothing. She's the first LGBTQ champion. She does amazing work for community. Fundraises all these different programs for
She's
kids sports.
one of the greatest of all time mixed martial artists,
Speaks
regardless of gender. She's one of the best of all time. She's on the top pound for pound list. She's in the top 10.
It's not like she's boring to watch. Like,
no,
Amanda Nunes
speaks
fights,
well,
it's like,
is
Jesus.
interesting. She's a superstar in MMA. Like, I remember watching her before she had the title, before the Shevchenko fights. Just watching Amanda Nunes, like, in the back of my mind, she's going to be a huge star.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, double champ. She's defending belts. She's talking about moving back up to featherweight and defending that as well. I can't wait to see what the future holds. Like, the future for her is just so bright. And it's not murky like a lot of these double champs are, and it's not cringy like a lot of them are.
No, she just beats everyone. That's it.
She doesn't need to talk too much because she leaves that performance in the octagon to remind you why she's there.
And she's funny too. Like, some of the stuff she says is pretty funny. And she speaks she speaks Portuguese, Spanish, and English all very well. Her English, I remember when she first won the title, she could definitely speak it, and she didn't need a translator at the end of the fights. But you can definitely tell, like, now she's really worked on that. Like, her English, it's definitely not, perfect, but she's extremely fluent in the language.
Especially when your partner's from America, too.
Exactly. Like, and she trains at arguably the best gym in the world. ATT, you're going to keep on getting better from fight to fight. And that's what we've seen, too. It's not like Amanda Nunes got to that championship level, and she just kind of stayed there. She gets better every single fight.
And that's exactly what you want to see. I mean, some people get there, rest on their laurels, stay stagnant, and then some fighters continue to gain. It's kind of a cop-out, but one of the greatest of all time, George St. Pierre, was on my Mount Rushmore. He just kept getting better and better until people caught up a bit.
They did.
And then he decided to hang him up, come back, and
still pretty good.
Starch Michael Bisping. So,
it's a
great showing by Amanda Nunes against Holm, and we talked enough about Santos and John Jones.
Close fight.
So, Matt, as far as a weekend preview is concerned, we're going to tease it a little bit.
We will.
Matt, we're going to have a second episode coming out tomorrow night.
Oh, shoot.
And we're going to do a breakdown of UFC coming at you from Sacramento, Bellator 224. We'll pepper in a little bit of one championship. We'll leave you wanting more with a little bit of PFL because there are some fun matchups on that card. But you can find that here on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, CastBox, wherever you catch your podcast. Also, be sure to check out Between the Links. This week's episode, we had Kyle Steele on short notice, Davidson Baker, Keith Schillen, host Mike Heck. Great stuff there. Of course, we've had good guests in the past, too, with John Morgan, Max Friedman, Marcel Dorff from last week. The list goes on, so it's been a lot of fun being on there. But we got some great fights coming up this weekend.
And send in your video questions, too, for round one. We're always looking for more questions. Send them in. They could be silly. They could actually be, pretty in-depth. It's something that we could argue about. Just the more that you guys interact with us, the better the content we can make for you guys.
Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed the show. Toss us a like, a sub. Honest to goodness, it really does help us out. And look out for that next video tomorrow. We will also see you this weekend for the fights. Lots of great cards. Craig Allen at Craig Allen FMP. Matt Allen at Matt Allen FMP. Enjoy the fights.